The fluorescent lights of the conference room flickered with a harsh certainty that matched the growing unease in my stomach. I, Elena Martinez, had always been the model employee. 5 years of unwavering dedication, countless successful campaigns, and a track record that spoke louder than any corporate platitude. Michael Reynolds, our senior marketing director, sat across from me, his fingers drumming a nervous rhythm on the sleek conference table. The manila folder between us might as well have been a loaded weapon. I could see the edges of my performance review peeking out, its pristine surface hiding a landscape of calculated destruction. "Elena," he began, his voice carefully modulated, "I think we need to discuss some concerns about your recent performance." I knew every detail of my work. My last quarter had been exceptional, a digital campaign for our biggest client that had increased their market engagement by 47%. I'd worked 80-hour weeks, missed my sister's wedding, and practically lived on cold takeout and black coffee. Yet here we were. As Michael began to read from the review, the words started to blur into a toxic landscape of fabricated failures. "Inconsistent project management," he read. "Missed deadlines, lack of team collaboration." Each statement was a calculated knife twist, so far from the truth that I felt a cold rage building inside me. I remembered the late nights, the weekends sacrificed, the moment when our team had pulled off what everyone said was impossible, turning around a failing product launch with my strategic approach. And now this. This piece of paper that was designed to do nothing more than push me out. My eyes drifted to the corner of the room, where I knew a camera was mounted. I'd always been observant, a trait that had made me successful in marketing. Something about this felt orchestrated, too perfect, too convenient. Michael continued, avoiding direct eye contact. His discomfort was palpable, a telltale sign that something wasn't right. The review wasn't just a critique. It was a carefully constructed narrative meant to destroy my professional reputation. "Is there anything you'd like to say?" he asked, a hint of desperation in his voice. I knew then that this was more than a simple performance review. This was an execution, a professional assassination carefully planned and meticulously executed. My mind raced back to conversations overheard, subtle hints I'd dismissed. The sudden cold shoulders from senior management, the project reassignments, the whispered conversations that stopped when I entered the room. Something was deeply wrong, and I was going to find out exactly what. "I'll need a copy of this review," I said, my voice steady. "For my records." Michael's hand trembled slightly as he slid the folder towards me. In that moment, I saw fear. Not the fear of an employer addressing a problematic employee, but the fear of someone who knew they'd done something fundamentally wrong. Little did Michael know, this was not an end. This was a beginning. And I would ensure that every single detail of this betrayal would be brought into the light. The next 48 hours became my war room. My apartment transformed into a forensic investigation site, with digital files sprawled across my dual monitors and physical documents meticulously arranged on a massive corkboard I'd hung specifically for this purpose. I started with my email archives, years of communication, carefully preserved and now scrutinized with a detective's precision. The first anomaly emerged quickly, a series of emails between Michael and the HR director, Sandra Weiss, that seemed innocuous at first glance, but revealed a disturbing pattern. Timestamps showed conversations about restructuring that predated my performance review by months. Subtle language hinted at something more sinister, references to reducing overhead and bringing in fresh talent that felt like coded language for something deeper. My contact list became my greatest asset. I reached out discreetly to former colleagues, carefully crafting messages that wouldn't raise suspicion. Sarah, a junior designer who'd left 6 months ago, was the first to provide a crucial piece of the puzzle. They did the same thing to me, she whispered during our encrypted video call. Remember Alex Rodriguez? He was next. They have a pattern of pushing out senior employees right before they're eligible for significant raises or stock options. The pieces began to click into place. This wasn't just about me, this was a systematic approach to corporate manipulation. I discovered something even more shocking. Michael's nephew, Jason Reynolds, had been quietly positioned in the company's talent pipeline. His resume, which I obtained through a carefully navigated LinkedIn connection, showed minimal experience but maximum connections. The documentation became my weapon. I created multiple encrypted backups, ensuring no single point of failure could compromise my growing evidence. Screenshots, email chains, comparative performance metrics. Each piece meticulously organized and verified. A pattern emerged that was impossible to ignore. Over the past 3 years, at least 7 senior-level employees had been pushed out using similar tactics. Performance reviews manipulated, opportunities subtly sabotaged, reputation systematically dismantled. The HR department wasn't just complicit, they were architects of this corporate betrayal. Sandra Weiss had been instrumental in creating a culture of silent elimination, protecting the company from potential legal repercussions while maintaining a veneer of professional respectability. My investigation revealed more than just my personal story. This was a systemic issue, a calculated approach to workforce management that prioritized short-term financial gains over human dignity. Each document, each email, each piece of evidence was a building block of my strategy. I wasn't just preparing to defend myself. I was preparing to expose an entire corrupt system. As the night wore on, my initial shock transformed into a cold, calculated resolve. They thought they could break me. They were wrong. This was just the beginning of their reckoning. Strategic planning requires more than just evidence. It demands a comprehensive understanding of your opponent's vulnerabilities and a network of support that operates in the shadows. My first move was to establish a secure communication channel. I purchased a burner phone and created anonymous email accounts that couldn't be traced back to me. Each contact was carefully vetted, each conversation meticulously planned. Tom Harrison, a forensic accountant I'd met at a marketing conference 2 years ago, became my first strategic ally. Over encrypted messaging, I shared select pieces of my investigation. His expertise in corporate financial forensics would prove invaluable. These financial discrepancies are more than just accounting errors, Tom told me during our third secure video call. Look at the pattern of bonus allocations and budget reallocations. They're systematically siphoning funds through creative accounting. I mapped out the company's entire ecosystem. The organizational chart became my battlefield plan. Each connection, each relationship was a potential pressure point. I identified key stakeholders, potential whistleblowers, and vulnerable departments. My network expanded strategically. Lisa Chen, a journalist specializing in corporate exposés, became another critical contact. I've been looking for a story that exposes corporate manipulation, she said, her eyes gleaming with professional excitement during our carefully arranged meeting in a nondescript coffee shop. The legal groundwork was equally crucial. I consulted with Robert Martinez, no relation, but a labor rights attorney who had built a reputation for taking on corporate giants. He helped me understand the legal landscape, identifying potential violations of employment laws and corporate governance regulations. They're walking a razor's edge, Robert explained, reviewing my collected evidence. Age discrimination, systematic workforce manipulation, potential securities fraud. Each piece is a potential legal landmine. I developed a multi-pronged approach. Financial exposure, detailed documentation of fund misappropriation, legal strategy, preparing potential class action lawsuit documentation. Media strategy, carefully leaked information to create maximum impact. Internal disruption, identifying and preparing potential internal whistleblowers. My personal savings became my war chest. I invested in additional resources, private investigators, forensic tools, secure communication technologies. Every dollar was a weapon in my arsenal. The most delicate part of the strategy involved creating multiple independent vectors of attack. No single point of failure could compromise the entire operation. Each piece of evidence was corroborated, each claim meticulously verified. I studied corporate takedown strategies, how Enron fell, how whistleblowers in major tech companies had successfully exposed systemic issues. Their stories became my playbook, their strategies my inspiration. Michael and his cronies thought they had silenced me. They believed a manipulated performance review would be the end of my story. But they had fundamentally misunderstood who I was. This wasn't just about revenge. This was about justice, about exposing a system that treats employees as disposable resources, about holding corporate power accountable. My plan was taking shape, and when it was ready, they would never see it coming. The first strike was calculated and precise. An anonymous email landed in the inboxes of 3 major industry publications, accompanied by carefully curated documents that exposed the company's systematic workforce manipulation. Each piece of evidence was a surgical instrument designed to cut deep into the corporation's carefully maintained facade. Within 48 hours, the first cracks appeared. Digital Marketing Weekly reached out for comment, their tone a mixture of professional curiosity and investigative hunger. I watched from the shadows, my burner phone and encrypted laptop my only companions. The company's initial response was predictable. Michael Reynolds called an emergency meeting, his voice trembling during a leaked internal communication I intentionally allowed to surface. "We need to contain this," he told Sandra from HR. "Find out who's behind these leaks." But I was always 3 steps ahead. My network of former employees began to speak, anonymously at first, then with increasing confidence. Sarah, the designer I'd spoken to earlier, published a detailed Medium article about her experience. Alex Rodriguez, another victim, contacted a labor rights blog with his own story. The company's legal team began their counteroffensive. Cease and desist letters flew like desperate missiles, but they were targeting ghosts. Each document was carefully laundered through intermediaries, each source protected by layers of digital and legal protection. Lisa Chen from the investigative journalism team was particularly effective. Her first exposé piece ran with a headline that sent shockwaves through the industry: "Corporate Cannibalism: How One Marketing Firm Systematically Eliminates Experienced Talent." The pressure mounted. Stock prices began to fluctuate. Potential clients started asking questions. The company's reputation, once pristine, now looked like a shattered mirror, each fragment reflecting a different ugly truth. I received an encrypted message from Tom Harrison. "They're hemorrhaging investor confidence," he wrote. "Your financial evidence is rock solid. The SEC will be interested." The psychological warfare was equally important. I ensured that Michael and Sandra felt the constant pressure of impending exposure. Anonymous tips, strategic information leaks, carefully timed revelations, each designed to keep them off balance. Their attempts to silence me became increasingly desperate. A private investigator was hired. I knew this because one of my contacts inside the company warned me. They were looking for a weak link, someone to blame, someone to discredit. But I had been thorough. Every potential vulnerability had been anticipated, every potential attack route secured. The company's HR director made a fatal mistake. In a moment of panic, she sent an email suggesting they neutralize the threat, a communication that would later become crucial evidence of their intent to suppress the truth. Robert Martinez, my legal advisor, confirmed what I already knew. "They're digging their own grave," he told me during our encrypted call. "Each move they make is another nail in their corporate coffin." I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. This had become about exposing a systemic problem, about protecting other employees who might face similar treatment. The final pieces were falling into place, and Michael Reynolds had no idea what was coming next. The final confrontation was choreographed with the precision of a military operation. I chose the location deliberately, the same conference room where Michael had delivered my fabricated performance review. The irony was not lost on me. The room that was meant to be my professional execution would now become the site of the company's public dismantling. Michael Reynolds looked smaller than I remembered. His once imposing frame now seemed to collapse under the weight of imminent exposure. Sandra Weiss sat beside him, her carefully maintained composure cracking at the edges. "We can negotiate," Michael began, his voice a desperate whisper. I laid out the evidence, not dramatically, not with anger, but with cold, calculated precision. Each document, each email, each piece of financial irregularity told a story of systematic corporate abuse. The SEC investigation was already underway. The industry publications had their exposés ready. Multiple former employees were prepared to testify. But this moment, this confrontation, was personal. "Do you remember," I said, my voice steady, "when you told me I was underperforming? When you said my work wasn't meeting the company's standards?" Michael's face went pale. Sandra shifted uncomfortably in her seat. I pulled out a series of documents, performance metrics from the past 5 years, client testimonials, campaign success rates. Each piece of paper was a testament to my professional excellence and to their calculated betrayal. "You tried to destroy my career," I continued. "Not just mine, but those of 7 other employees. A systematic approach to eliminating experienced talent to save on compensation." The room felt electric. The weight of years of manipulation hung in the air. Michael's desperation became palpable. "We can make this go away," he pleaded. "A settlement, a non-disclosure agreement, anything." I almost laughed. The man who had tried to crush me was now begging for mercy. "This isn't about money," I said. "This is about exposure, about holding corporate manipulation accountable." The legal implications were devastating. The financial documents I'd uncovered suggested more than just workforce manipulation. There were hints of potential securities fraud. The company's stock was already plummeting. Major clients were pulling out. Sandra tried to interject, but her voice came out as a weak stammer. I produced the final piece of evidence, an email chain that directly linked the workforce elimination strategy to cost-cutting measures designed to inflate executive bonuses. It was their ultimate vulnerability. "Beg me to stop," Michael whispered, a final desperate attempt at negotiation. And in that moment, I understood the true nature of power. It wasn't about destruction. It was about exposure, about bringing the truth to light. "No," I said simply. "This ends on my terms." The conference room, once a site of my perceived professional death, was now the birthplace of their corporate downfall. Every carefully planned strategy, every meticulously gathered piece of evidence was about to bring their entire system crashing down. Michael Reynolds was right about one thing. I was going to change everything. The aftermath was nothing short of a corporate earthquake. Within weeks, the company that had tried to destroy me was itself destroyed. The SEC investigation revealed a depth of misconduct that went far beyond our initial discoveries. Executives were indicted. The board of directors was completely dismantled. What was once a prestigious marketing firm became a cautionary tale in corporate ethics. I watched the news reports with a sense of profound transformation. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about systemic change. Lisa Chen, the investigative journalist who had been my strategic ally, published a comprehensive exposé. The Martinez Method, they called it, a blueprint for holding corporate power accountable. Speaking engagements and consulting offers began to pour in. Companies wanted to understand how to prevent the kind of systematic manipulation I had exposed. The legal settlements were substantial, not just for me, but for the 7 other employees who had been systematically pushed out. Class action lawsuits became individual victories of professional redemption. My phone never stopped ringing. Podcasts, news networks, professional conferences. Each platform became an opportunity to shed light on workplace manipulation. I became more than just a whistleblower. I became a voice for professional integrity. Tom Harrison's forensic analysis of the company's financials became a landmark study in corporate governance. Robert Martinez used the case as a cornerstone for new labor protection legislation. What had started as my personal battle had become a movement. Michael Reynolds disappeared from the Sham professional landscape. Last I heard, he was working as a mid-level manager in a small regional firm, a far cry from his previous position of power. Sandra Weiss faced professional disbarment from HR professional associations, but the true victory wasn't about their downfall. It was about the change we'd inspired. Companies began implementing more transparent performance review processes. Board oversight became more rigorous. The narrative around employee treatment started to shift. My experience became a catalyst for broader conversations about workplace ethics. I remembered the night in my apartment, surrounded by documents and fueled by a mixture of anger and determination. I had no idea then how far this would go. What started as a personal fight for justice had become something much larger. Professional networks reached out. Women in leadership positions shared their own stories of silent suppression. My strategy became a playbook for those who had been systematically marginalized. The financial compensation was significant, but it was never about the money. It was about proving that one person, armed with truth and strategy, could challenge an entire system. My new consulting firm, Integrity Strategies, became a beacon for corporate accountability. We developed frameworks for ethical workplace management, training programs that taught companies how to value their employees genuinely. Years later, when young professionals asked me about my journey, I would tell them the same thing. Your worth is not determined by a performance review. Your power lies in your ability to stand up, gather evidence, and speak truth to power. The day Michael begged me to stop was the day I truly began my real career. Not as a marketing strategist, but as a catalyst for change. Some might call it revenge. I called it justice. And it was only the beginning.